All right, cool. I guess we're recording now. So today we're going to talk about the journey to self-service. It's a topic that I think is super cool. Ever since I read Zemek Degani's book on the data mesh, I've been talking about the fact that we should do something like this. I'm, of course, biased by the fact that I spent 7 years working with and effectively being a data engineer out in the field. And so I'm really excited to talk to you today, Chuck. Um, I know you and I work different sides of the fence. I do a lot of pre-sales work out in the field, helping customers be successful, mitigate risk before they decide to go on their self-service journey. But you do the hard work. Like you actually do the stuff that's really meaningful. And more importantly, you get to do it with like the world's leading companies, like the ones that we're allowed to talk about, the ones that are publicly referenceable to that we'll get into today. I just think is freaking amazing. Like, side note, like, did your family know like the fact that you do this kind of cool stuff? You're like, yeah, yeah, I helped like roll this stuff out to a couple hundred, couple thousand people, no big deal.
Uh, so I've got really young kids, and what I how I explain to them what I do is, I say I'm kind of like a wizard. You know,
Uh
I type incantations into a little black
huh.
box, and then
Uh-huh.
many miles away things happen. So that's about as much as they understand about that. But yeah, it's really fun, and I've been in the Kafka space for a long time. I used to work at Confluent. I started in the education space, and then I went to technical marketing, and then I was a field engineer at a different company for a while, doing both pre-sales and post-sales. And now I'm pretty firmly in post-sales for some of our biggest customers. And so I've seen this progression, and I've seen
Hmm.
people step on rakes over
Hmm.
and over again.
Hmm.
And so it's cool to offer a product that's actually trying to tackle the the people side of
Hmm.
the issue, because
Hmm.
I mean everybody, like, you get into Kafka, you get really excited. It's like, oh, it opens up all these possibilities. But then the reality hits, and at the end of the day, like, it is still people working with people, and there just hasn't been a lot in the Kafka space to help manage that. And so I really like Conductor self service for that.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, that's what blew me away with Kafka too, was like, in particularly all the big data tools. Like I remember doing the whole who's who and the zoo thing of like Hadoop's like 27 different tools or whatever they had. And I started using Kafka. I was like, oh my God, I'm sending and writing so many records. Come on, let's do more work. Let's put more workloads on this thing. Oh my God, it's handling it
Yeah.
just fine. Let's do more. And it's funny. Like I remember Johnny saying it grows like a weed. And ever since then, I'm like, yeah, that makes perfect sense. And then I remember reading Zemeckis book, and she's like, yeah, there's going to be a lot of vendors that come out and talk about, yeah, we offer self-service kind of out of the box. And so, like, I've yet to meet. I first of all, there's not that many vendors that actually offer kind of self-service out of the box for starters. There's very few, and
Mhm.
then second of all, it's actually a lot harder. Like it's funny. Like we talk about self-service and we talk about like the technical stuff of it, but
Mhm.
like what I find way more interesting is it touches on team organization, how your
Mhm.
organization is structured, what are the security rules, what's your security model that you use, how is all that implemented, and I think that's where the rubber really meets the road with self-service, because I've seen a lot of folks go, "Oh yeah, we can do self-service," or "Oh yeah, we could write that from scratch." And like maybe you could, but these are considerations that like will immediately hit the first like real use case where I'll go,
Mhm.
"Okay, this is a production grade requirement. We can't do that anymore. Like it's got to live out of a GitHub. It can't live out of your personal GitHub." Um, yeah, so I guess
Mhm.
for starters, I guess we'll kind of talk about like Swiss Post, Virgin Australia. Those are kind of like the marquee use cases. So, what we'll do in the podcast notes or the link, I guess, is we'll just include some linkages to those case studies. But effectively, Swiss Post, what that's like a 900-year-old business. So, talk about like teaching an old dog new tricks. Like that's probably what 900 people using Conductor self-service every day in some way, shape, or form. And you think about it, like that's the whole like Swiss communication system. Like when you think about like how the Swiss government's actually going to talk to its millions of citizens officially, like all of that data, all of that information effectively flows through that self-service use case. So yeah. But yeah, let's go ahead. Let's talk about like some of the challenges, some of the pain, like some of the why
Mhm.
people get started on self-service. I find that the most interesting because like Yeah, so, like, we talk about young kids, like, you have young kids, I have young kids, my kids
Mhm.
are 2 and 4, and, like, I love watching them learn more about themselves, where they're like, "Oh, this is a thing, and, like, I feel this thing, and I don't know how to talk about it, I don't know how to describe it," and, like, I feel like I see the same thing with organizations where they're like, "Man, this stuff breaks all the time," or, "Man, I'm doing a lot of tickets that, like, don't actually add to the platform stability, but I'm so busy meeting the application team's needs I never get a chance to actually fix it. And it's like the classic, like the cobbler's kids have no shoes kind of thing. So
Mhm.
like, yeah, tell me like what are some of the pains that you see? I'd love to talk about like what I kind of see pre-sales wise. And then what kind of leads people to kind of consider this path.
Yeah, so the way I think about it, going back to when I worked at Confluent, there's this concept that they introduced, which is the what do they call it? The streaming maturity curve.
Hmm. Yep.
And
The maturity model. Yep.
and over time, I became really, really familiar with this because it's like, oh, you look at it, it makes sense. On one side of the spectrum, it's you know, developers kicking the tires, they spin up Kafka locally with Docker, and they start messing around with producers and consumers. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you have sort of the North Star. There is Kafka's the central nervous system of the company
Hmm.
that
Yep.
messages are being passed around and being reacted to in real time. It's this central nervous system, and Confluent has this nice graph that shows this is like a really smooth kind of exponential looking value versus effort kind of thing. Like
Uh-huh.
yeah, you put in effort over time, and the value becomes exponential. And then the reality kind of hits. And so I saw this, when I was doing education at Confluent, like people are
Hmm.
starting to learn. I saw a lot of that beginning of the maturity curve,
Yeah.
and then I would talk to the solution architects there who were working with customers, and you start to hear the real stories of
Yeah.
issues happening, and it's it turns out that the curve is much, instead of this smooth up, it's like really kind of wiggly.
I was gonna say, I see it's like a valley of death.
Yeah.
I see people like because you're right that the central nervous system is like the North Star, and I see that all the time. And I am on board. Let's have a
Yeah.
living, breathing central nervous system. But like I see customers progressing, and then if they don't do that self-service milestone, usually it's like you know what? Let's just pause right here. This is good for like log ingestion. Let's send our
Mhm.
telemetry through. Let's not do anything else. Like that's what Kafka's good for. Let's just
Yeah.
we can't
Uh,
do anything more.
yeah, and you'll get inconsistency
Hmm.
in how the teams are using the tool. So you'll have some teams that are super users, and they're
Hmm.
producing a lot of value, and things are really good. And then you have other teams are just starting out and finding their place in the platform. And then these central platform teams are just being pulled in every direction possible. Like this team is trying to go so fast, and you know they're going so fast that you almost want to just give them admin control or give them their own
Yeah.
Kafka cluster and
Yeah.
just
Oh
say
yeah.
go fast,
Don't bother me
go
anymore.
for
Here's your playground.
it.
Get out of here. Yeah.
um, and then the slower teams that are starting to adopt, like there's a lot of education that has to happen, or they're just doing rookie mistakes, and you can't you wake up, you get paged, and it's like, oh, somebody's committing 1,000 offsets per second, and it's
Yeah.
just totally destroying the cluster's performance. So like, yeah, it's all over the place.
Yeah. Yeah, and like I think it's funny because I've seen it a couple of different ways. Like I was just working with this major oil and gas company, and like it's funny based on the success of the various teams, the organization as a whole will make the decision to like give it to everybody or take it away. And like
Mhm.
to see the cycles that the organization goes through based on the success or failure of how those organizational controls are implemented. And that's what I find the craziest thing is like Kafka is a tool that is thought of and philosophically like it's a multi-tenant kind of piece of software in the sense that teams will have their own topics, they'll have their own producers and consumers, everything's kind of asynchronous, right? And like everybody does their kind of own thing as long as the central hub is kind of like up and running. Um, but like in terms of like who owns what, how you limit risk, how you limit expensive configurations, like that's not solved for in the
Mhm.
open source, and it's not terribly well solved for in the industry, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And so like it just and the problem is like people always are like, well, you can't see this, or you're not supposed to know about these throughput and performance measures or whatever. And so like it's that seesawing back and forth that like you can tell like it's sputtering, like they're almost about to get over that hump, and then
Mhm.
they go,
Mhm.
"Ah," or sometimes they do, and they just make this massive effort to build something from scratch or something that's causes a lot of drag that I see at the other end. Or the worst is, I think the worst usual thing that happens is like they go, okay, we'll give you your own cluster. And then they get really surprised when it gets really expensive and out of control. And they go,
Yeah.
what? I can't
Yeah.
believe Kafka's so expensive. And you're like, it
Yeah.
doesn't have to
And
be this way.
yeah, another thing that happens is, there'll be a lot of organic kind of ground up. Different teams are they're revamping old processes, and stuff that used to take an hour is now taking a minute or less, or a second even. And the business is starting to see real value from that. And so it starts to grow and grow, and then it gets to a critical mass where then all of a sudden the organization clamps down. They
Hmm.
say they say, okay, this is becoming too critical, so we're going to clamp down. And
Hmm.
now you have to go through all of this process to create a
Hmm.
topic, and you have to um, they
Fill out these forms in triplicate. We'll have a meeting next week. And you're
yeah,
like,
they build
over.
automation and all of that. This is one of the big, when I talk to customers about self-service. One of the big pushbacks I see is, oh, we have automation. We use Terraform or whatever.
Hmm.
And it's
Hmm.
like it's such a small piece of the puzzle. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
that's definitely a requirement. You need to be able to automate stuff. But automating stuff isn't the same um, as providing freedom. Um,
Mhm. Yeah,
and with
just because
that,
your
that
infrastructure gets provisioned in 4 minutes, like it's not technically automated. The approval, like this is the thing that kills me all the time is like they go, "Oh yeah, it's automated." And it's like, "Well, how many meetings were you in before that?" And it's like, "Oh, we were in 4 meetings with an hour each with half the engineering staff." And I was like, "So like that's like what, I don't know, $50 an hour per person for 10
Mhm.
people in the room for an hour for four
Yeah.
hours. Like those are really expensive meetings alone."
Yeah,
So,
or they'll automate the provisioning of a new Kafka cluster,
yeah.
but then it's like, okay, I mean, there's cost associated with that. And now, like, one of the great benefits of Kafka is you have all the data in one place, that you write once, read many,
Yep.
right? But if you're now spinning up different Kafka, I've had conversations. Somebody told me that they have 300 Kafka clusters. I'm just like,
Insane, insane.
like a
It
single
defeats the
very
purpose.
yeah,
Like
yeah. So now all that you've now, like, one of the great benefits of Kafka is breaking down the silos, and now you just have a bunch of silos again.
yeah, yeah,
Um,
100%.
and yeah.
And honestly too, like it's funny we talk about like the infrastructure costs or the time costs, but I actually think the most expensive stuff is the stuff that you don't do when you
Mhm.
achieve that fifth level of power on the Kafka maturity curve. Like you don't go
Mhm.
Super Saiyan with Kafka. It's all the opportunity costs you missed. And like
Yeah.
I have a story that sticks with me and still like it still bothers me. So many moons ago, I was working with the Department of Defense, and they were building this thing called Advana, which is like the advanced analytics platform for the entire DoD. So that's $850 billion a year they're spending money. And so Congress wrote a law that says all government agencies, including the DoD, even though it's the largest employer in the country, on potentially on the planet, they still have to go through an audit. And so even though you have $850 billion, you still got to be like, we still got to understand how much money you spent on pencil last month or whatever. And
Mhm.
so, like, it was the hugest, it was one of the largest undertakings I think the DoD's ever done IT wise. And like, they have the system, like, for example, called MOCAS. It's a system so old, it was modernized in the 90s. It was under its second modernization in the 90s. So, like, to give you an idea, there's like 1,200, 1,900 financial systems of record in the DoD, um, for all $850 billion of transactions and procurements for aircraft carriers and tanks and shoes and everything. And so one of the things I find that's crazy is they could only do batch. I was like, hold on a second, these transactions happen in real time. Not all of them are MoCas, which was originally built in like 1959. Like we have Oracle systems, we can do change data capture pipelines. Like those should
Mhm.
be real time feeds. And then you have the actual feeds of like Blue Force Tracker of like where these assets are, how much gas they're burning, all the stuff. Like you can now actually in real time produce the money spent to the outcomes achieved. And the DoD was so close to getting there, and they
Mhm.
never met that curve. And it's one of the things that kills me is I would love to see a real-time dashboard. And now the reporting's done monthly or quarterly, which is light years ahead. And we still have the opportunity to get there, but it's not just making it the central nervous system that we talk about. It's actually the organization becoming an industry leader. And we're talking about the Department of Defense, our tax dollars at work, potentially becoming like a global leader for how defensive organizations work. So, anyways, I just
Yeah.
find that to be the most expensive stuff is the dream not achieved. Um,
Well, and like there are countries that do this really well. Like I I don't know off the top of my head, but like there's some I think there's some Eastern European countries where
yes.
like all their money transfers, all their like all their everything in government is all real time
Yeah.
um like my big thing when I got married, it was like can't I just get married and submit that form and then you
Yep.
guys figure out everything. But no, it's like I had to go to every single department. I had to like do social security, I had to change my name and blah blah blah. I
Yep.
had to do everything separate. I have to do it separate with the state and with federal government. And yeah, there's some governments out there that are just light years ahead. And
Yep.
we could see it. We could see what we're missing.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. And like, and that's the thing that I wish more folks internalize is like we're just talking about data. We're just talking about fields in a record where
Mhm,
logic is applied to them. And you can do it from a business intelligence perspective, or you could do it from a transactions perspective. But at the end of the day, like sending the data to a database, letting it sit there for a week while it undergoes like a manual approval or something like that, like, and then it gets batched up in the next week's releases, like, there's nobody that benefits from that time delay. So, yeah, anyways, it's just fields in a record. And so I feel like
mhm,
self-service is actually that key crux to being like, okay, line of business, what are the things that you need that to apply logic on, the records that you need to apply logic on to feel comfortable like releasing this or allowing it to be like previewed in real time or something like that. And so I like there's a couple of things I always find myself referencing and cursing the heavens about. Like
mhm,
like sometimes I just want to flip the table and go, guys, we have flying robots on Mars. Like there's literally flying robots on Mars and we can't get this right. I still got to submit forms in triplicate and like wait 3 weeks for this thing to get done. That's crazy. Or like the
yep,
other one is like the Domino's pizza tracker. Like I know who's making my pizza, what state it's in.
yep,
Like this is for pizza and I can't get like my most important documents done the same way. Like that's crazy. So, anyways,
yeah.
it actually does bring me to the curiosity I've had for a long time about why these things end up being and feeling so broken. And that's the concept of Conway's law. I'm pretty sure you've heard me complain about Conway's law before.
Mhm,
Um, but yeah, basically the whole idea, and this is where I think self-service actually becomes like that key that unlocks a lot of stuff, is we talk about self-service solving the natural tension and demands and competing priorities between application teams and platform teams. But like those exist largely in part because of Conway's law, because like so for those of us who are unfamiliar, Conway's law and pretty much for the record is like basically any organization that uses IT, or you try and write code effectively, the code will ultimately, whether it's infrastructure as code or your actual software code, if you're building like maybe a monolithic application or a series of microservices, will ultimately like represent the organizational structure. So like the lines of business, the application teams, those all report to those specific lines of businesses. They own the microservices and the transactions and so on and so forth.
mhm,
And basically, the platform teams serve the organization as a whole. There's that natural tension.
yep,
And so, anyways, it's just one of those things that, like, I find that infrastructure is actually a lagging indicator of the organization and where it's at. So, like, if I'm looking for where the organization is going, whether or not it's going to be successful, I shouldn't look at who has what permissions on the infrastructure. I feel like self-service is actually a way to solve that delta, whereby you give the platform team the ability to like restrict expensive configurations, simplify costs, centralize controls, have a centralized view of all that governance stuff, and then the application teams can go make the topics and do the processing that they need to do, and that's that. And there's no like key to kind of unlock that. Like there's no easy button, unfortunately, yet in industry. Don't don't follow us, Apache Software Foundation, I guess.
Yeah, and it
Uh,
gets even more interesting when there's organizational changes, because now
yeah.
they did such a good job trying to organize the infrastructure, and then there's organizational changes. Now all of a sudden, this person moves over there, and these teams get reshuffled, and now the ownership kind of gets mixed up. And then
Oh, you
yeah,
know what's even better from what I've seen is actually when there's organizational change, but it's at like a VP or exec level, and like he plays golf with a different like cloud account team or something. And so the new exec comes in and he goes, for a little while we're using AWS or Google or whatever. We're gonna all go to Azure, and then like suddenly like you have like a legitimate like diversified infrastructure problem with like the organizational structure going on at the same
yep,
time. It's just a nightmare. And basically, like, at least from what I see, is like the change organizationally happens so fast that the infrastructure just can't keep up. And so,
mhm,
like, worst case, you got like, somebody who's been there for ages and has permissions to everything. And if you go talk to him and you're nice to him, he'll get it done for you really quick. But like, best case scenario, you're like, hey, you fired Bob. Bob has access to the keys to everything. He's gone. And you're like, oh God, we're locked out of everything. No, no,
yeah,
no. So, anyways, basically, it's just the business wants to move faster, but it can't, and then it doesn't understand why it can't at the same time, which
yeah.
I always find interesting that it can't discover that within itself. Um, yeah, I don't know. Do you also, for the people you work with, I imagine there's like a little bit of like, I don't want to call it therapy, but like, unfortunately, platform teams get blamed for stuff
Hmm,
that's not really
hmm.
their fault. Like, do you find yourself having to like empathize a lot with those guys?
100%. Like sometimes I write a lot of notes, and sometimes it's like, well, this session was really more of a therapy session for.
Venting for them, yeah.
I'm just telling them, it's okay. Like
Yep,
it's
you're
it's
not
okay. It's
alone.
not your fault.
Yep, it's not your fault.
You know, and
You would
yeah,
schedule your PTO for that time, like, that's totally fine.
yeah. Um, I'm just thinking the organizations I work with. I mean, everybody they're always in a state of transition. Like,
Always, yeah.
um,
Which is good and bad, I think that's how we end up, like, ending up with some of our customers. They end up
yeah.
finding something that works, and they take a chance on it.
Yeah, I've only had one case where somebody came in. It was a greenfield project. They're like, we're modernizing our order management system, and they have a consultant who's done this at a couple of different companies, and we're walking through the Conduktor stuff and self service, and he was like, "Wow, yeah, I've done this 3 or 4 times, and what you explained with self service, it hits those I felt those pain points. So we're gonna
Mhm.
go ahead and get this now, and we're gonna get it going now." They started creating self-service applications, and um, I don't think they've actually handed the keys over to the application team yet, but all the infrastructure, all of
Mhm,
the base line is all
mhm,
set, and it's just running so much smoother.
mhm.
So there's like only one case where somebody had the forethought and thought, okay, greenfield project starting from scratch, let's get this from the beginning.
Yeah.
Almost everybody else, it's, they say, we don't have topic naming conventions.
Nope,
We don't know who owns what.
nope.
We don't know the business context. So when somebody says, "Hey, I need a topic with 50 partitions," they're just like, I
Sounds
guess
good.
you do.
Yeah,
Sure." And
yeah.
then it becomes this mess, and then the infrastructure costs goes out of control, or they spin up, a bunch of Kafka cluster that they don't need, and they don't know who owns those, and so you
Yep.
just have kind of like idle clusters running. Like there's no control, governance, visibility, um, and so like my challenge with a lot of these companies is where can we start?
Yeah.
Like how can we how can we incrementally improve and kind of go from there? But
Yeah. You know what's funny
yeah.
is actually one of my favorite things to do to build trust with folks when I'm talking to them is to be like, hey guys, like there's a last activity field for topics. Like
Hmm.
when the topic was last written to or touched. And with Conductor, with the community version, you just stack rank whenever the last topic was last touched. So you go like topics over a gig in size hasn't been touched for like more than
Yep.
24 hours. Like that's a pretty easy like bit of spring cleaning you can do.
Right.
And
Yep. Yep.
here's hey guys, here's my list of however many topics, who owns what, and then like you're already like starting to like soften the beaches, so to speak, for the concept of self-service. Because I
Mhm.
don't know, a lot of times it just kind of has to land on people. So I guess it does bring me to an interesting topic that I really, really want to talk to you about. Is like because most people don't start in green fields, they're always accepting something, they're always in a constant transition. How
Yep.
do people actually start to implement self-service? What are some like easy ways to kind of get started in your experience?
Yeah. So that was a good one with, what what topic hasn't been touched in a long time, then you probably just get rid of it.
Because
With
everybody's got them. It's
Yeah.
not your organization that's naughty. Everybody's got them.
Yep. And there's also the scream test that you can do
Yes,
sometimes. Maybe start
I
in a
love
lower
that one.
environment.
Yep.
You have a hypothesis that I don't think anybody cares about this. You go ahead and delete it and see who screams,
Yeah.
or you can announce. You say, hey, does anybody own this?
Yeah.
I'm going to delete
I
it 24
Yep.
hours from now or 1 week from now.
By the way, that's my favorite question to data engineers and people who build like business intelligence dashboards because it's a similar problem, right? Like they build a beautiful looking dashboard, they do all this great in-depth analysis. They go, "Hey, if you turned off your data warehouse, do you know who would be screaming at you first?" And then you just see their faces go white at the mere concept of it. Oh, yeah, so
Yeah.
you could do the scream test. I'm always a big fan of scream test.
Scream test is okay. Start in lower environments.
Yep.
Um, but a really good heuristic, like I'm looking for like 80/20 kind of like how can we get 80% of the way there with 20% of
Mhm,
the effort. Another really good one is looking at your permissions, looking at your ACLs or
mhm,
your RBAC roles or whatever. Um, Look at who has write permission, because
mhm,
in Kafka, if you're doing it correctly, um, whoever has write permission is usually who owns the topic. They're
mhm,
responsible for that data. And you have,
mhm,
write once, read many. So you have many different services that might be interacting with the topic, but it's whoever is writing it. It's kind of like a single writer principle. Um, that's probably going to be who owns it. So you'll have, you'll be able to programmatically see who has write access to which topics, and you'll get a list of service accounts. You get an
mhm,
association with service accounts, and that gets you started. And then
mhm,
you can start building your self-service model. So in Conductor, it's application based access control basically,
mhm,
and governance. And so you start building your applications, and application or you know, technically application instances we call them. Like
mhm,
it's think of it as like an environment like dev staging prod. So each application instance is associated with a service account. So if you could find the right permission on those topics, you start to get you can really easily get a picture of um, which service accounts own those topics, and you start building out your application instances based
mhm,
on that.
mhm.
Um, and then you know then you need to go one step further and say, okay, I've got a bunch of service accounts, but I don't actually know who in the organization owns them. And so you
Yes.
have to do a little bit of hunting, maybe an internal campaign like, hey, we're going towards a better a better system for automated governance in Kafka. Here's what we have so far. um, you know Raise your like raise your hand if you own these service accounts. um, or maybe it becomes now it's a social problem, right? That's a lot of
Right.
what self-service is meant to solve is getting a handle on the social dynamics of it.
Yes.
um
Well, and
Getting a
this
handle.
brings.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. Well,
uh what was
this
it?
actually brings me to a
Go ahead.
question that I'm curious about, right? Because like with Conductor, you can tie in your SSO, you can do the external group mappings.
Yep.
Then what we're really talking about is in your mind, you would also onboard the SSO and the users and make sure everybody can
Mhm.
log in and have an account. And
Yep.
then I guess what you're talking about is taking those externally mapped groups and the members in that group and then mapping them to that specific service account, right?
Yeah. Well, to be pedantic, there's an
Please.
application. There's
Yes.
an application, and that application has different application instances.
Right.
So you have a logical concept of an application, and then dev staging prod. And those dev staging prod, whatever, those will have service accounts. But the application, the logical um, concept of the application is where you define the ownership. So that's where you you link to an SSO group, and you say, okay, this group is responsible for this application. They're the owners, and
Right.
they can take actions
Right.
on behalf of this application.
So let's talk about it in terms of like an example, right? So like you're part of the application dev team for the orders group, right? And so the orders team would have an application instance for dev, another one for test, another one for prod, right? Am I thinking about this right?
Sure. Yep. Yep.
Okay. And so I would have topics that I could create pursuant to a naming convention in dev,
Hmm.
test, and prod, and those rules can be different across dev, test, and prod, right?
Yep. Yep. So
Awesome.
there's this concept of resource policies.
Hmm.
So you can put policies on topics, schemas, connectors, a bunch of stuff. And so one of the common ones is topic configuration
Hmm.
and topic naming conventions
Hmm.
and labels. So
Hmm.
Conductor has this really thorough concept of labels that you
Mhm.
can start labeling resources by line of business and all kinds of things. um, and there's automatically a label associated with the application as well. So you get this really rich metadata around your top. So it's not just topic and how many partitions. Your it's your topic, your configuration, and all of this business metadata enriched
Mhm.
with it. And the resource policies enforce standards. So you can
Right.
say, this application instance, or this whatever, you create a policy that says, um, you know, the topic naming convention must match this regular expression.
Mhm.
And then um, if people are messing around trying to create whatever topics, they'll get an error message, and that error message is also it's customizable. So you can
Right.
pop up an error message that says, "Hey, you're not using the right naming convention. Here's the you can give them really specific error messages, not these like arcane or
Yeah,
permission denied,
Java
whatever. It's like
864, right? KIP
it's
899 is broken, whatever, yeah.
yeah, really specific error messages that say like, this is our naming convention. If here's our wiki page, go educate yourself about what you're supposed to do. Like, these are our policies. um
Yeah, here's our Confluence page about the rules you're supposed to follow that you
yeah.
clearly didn't read.
Yeah.
Cool. That's awesome. And, like, I guess the other thing too is, like, if I was a infrastructure platform person, like, I would be super hard on the tagging and labeling
Yeah.
of different resources because I know it would save me a ton of pain on the back end, and then more importantly, like, the platform team, unfortunately, they're responsible for cost management in addition to performance and stability of the platform itself, and so, like, I have to attribute cost and usage for the platform that I run. And I don't know of any other way to do it in Kafka that is manageable or any way that makes sense. I don't know. Am I wrong in thinking that like short of like having a clipboard and standing in somebody's cubicle, like I don't know how else you would get that information.
You could do some complex stuff with like JMX metrics from Kafka, and like bytes
Yep.
in, bytes out, and you get really complicated with it. But what's nice in conduct, I mean, there's also this whole kind of separate feature of chargeback,
Yeah.
um, with conductor chargeback or showback, which is, you bring in those labels and
Yeah.
you automatically have you kind of automatically aggregates by service account, but you
Yeah.
might several service accounts associated with some business concept, and so you
Yeah.
have labels on those service accounts, and then so you can actually aggregate by these labels as well, and so you get
Yeah.
these roll ups of like who's spending what, and that, I mean, that's a great way also to get people to delete their own resources. Is you say, here's a report on, um, you know, on the dollars that you're costing us,
Yeah.
and here's your budget. Make
Yeah.
it happen.
Yeah.
Make it
Like,
happen. Or we're just gonna start deleting stuff.
yeah. Well, and that's the other thing too. Like, I guess because I come from like the data engineering, data analysis world, I've always wondered like how do you like actually attribute costs to ETL tools? How do you attribute costs to the dashboards? Like,
Mhm, mhm.
is it just you put your finger out in the wind and like, I don't know, like I'll take 8 weeks of a data scientist time and 3 weeks of an ETL developer's time, and we'll get some data sets and some analysis going. And like some those are really expensive dashboards if you look at them only
Yep,
once a month, you know? They're expensive to compute, they're expensive to manage. So yeah, it's just yeah, it just seems like it's a really tricky thing to do considering the totality of what you would have to build if something like Conductor didn't exist. Because you would
mhm,
have to calculate the input outputs of
yep,
the topics for all the service accounts using JMX metrics, maybe, or whatever else other metadata might be available. Plus, you'd
mhm,
have to map with the existing security model. Plus, you'd have to continually find a way to manage the churn in the organization to all of those things that you just did the mapping for. Yeah, it just
yep.
seems like a ton of work. Um, Actually, come to think of it, since a fair amount of Conductor's customers are in Confluent Cloud or Confluent uses Confluent as their Kafka infrastructure provider, can you tell me a little bit about how we leverage Confluent's security model and self-service if that already exists?
Yeah, so, uh, self-service outside of Confluent, just Kafka self-service, it uses, Kafka ACLs under the hood for
Hmm.
the service
Hmm.
accounts. But we found we have a lot of Confluent customers, and a lot of them use Confluent RBAC. So that it's a different permissions model, where they use, instead of Kafka ACLs, they use, role bindings.
Hmm.
They're called, where basically it takes a principal, which is an identity, a service account, basically. It takes a principal, it takes a resource like a topic, and then a role. So like developer read, and
Hmm.
so it creates so those three things together make a role binding. So you say, this service account has developer read access on this topic, and that's a
Hmm.
role binding. Um, and so yeah, one of our recent releases, we integrated with Confluent RBAC in this way, where under the hood, instead of creating Kafka ACLs, um, uh, Conductor would create Confluent role bindings. So you
That's
can
great.
integrate with that with your existing permission structure, basically. And why this was really important is because, essentially because of schema registry.
Hmm.
So Confluent has this amazing concept of a schema registry. Like, schemas are important.
Hmm.
The original creation of Kafka was like, it was is at this like height of NoSQL, where everybody's like, no, schemas are bad. Just put in bytes.
Yeah.
Like, just
Just let
don't, like,
Avro figure it out. It'll be fine.
let me
I
do what I
remember
want,
watching the
man.
video from Tim Berglund about that, and I was like, I will die for the for the schema registry. Because because on the data engineering side, you're like,
Yeah.
you create this beautiful Fabergé egg, right? And you're like, because you're again, you're just a middleman, right? I'm just taking in what I get and I package my logic and I make this beautiful data product that goes in a dashboard somewhere. And then somebody updates the firmware and breaks everything that I built. And I was like, the schema registry would save me. I need this in my life. So yeah, I'm
Yeah.
right there with you.
It
Sorry.
turns out schemas are a good idea.
They're a
Um,
great idea. They're not a bad thing.
so anyway, schema registry so Confluent schema registry in their managed, or in their product, has uh, authorization on it using Confluent RBAC. but this isn't an Apache Kafka concept. So our self-service model before, um, you could connect up schema registry and you could create schemas and things like that, but there's no permission model on schema registry. The
Hmm.
assumption is that schema registry is open, that
Hmm.
there's no permission on it, and the permissions model for schema registry, it really there's Confluent has this Confluent uh, RBAC role binding thing for schema registry. So that was kind of a missing piece of the permissions puzzle. And so by integrating with Confluent RBAC, we're able to automatically create not only role bindings for the server's account on the topic, but also on the schemas as well.
That's awesome. Thank you for letting me know about that. I've wanted to go into more detail about it, but I just haven't had a chance to really mess around with it.
Yeah.
And I guess the bigger thing too is like what I find when I'm having these kinds of conversations is a lot of people think it's a big bang migration.
Yeah.
It has have you done a lot of big bang migrations to self-service, or has it been more of like, I know who my noisiest customers are internally, I'll take care of them first? Has it been more like that?
I mean, it's there's just the one kind of greenfield project where I was able to get in and like really get them going. So they're like 100% self-service. Um, but everybody else is no, not Big Bang at all. It's
Yeah.
they have a big mess. They know they have a mess, and so I step them through like one thing at a time. And even it could even be as small as let's just do one application. Let's start with
Hmm.
one application.
Hmm.
You like let's not try to boil the ocean, try to get the ownership of everything all at once. Like we can start with the highest throughput. I don't know, whatever you want to start with, and just say like let's get some governance and ownership on this. Let's get some resource policies in place. Like there's a lot you can do, and over time slowly incorporate resources into self-service. And then of course, moving forward, anything
Hmm.
new, do it the self-service the way. Do it
Yep.
with the Conductor GitOps, and um, yeah, you'll just be in much better shape.
Yeah, that's what I find is like a pretty good planning step too, is like, hey, on X date, any new topic requests, it's
Yep,
going to fall under the self-service model. Um, and in the meantime, while we're handling those kinds of self-service requests, we've built that and stood that up. Here's how we do it internally. While that is in process, let me go take my first person that I know I really want to handle this with and
hmm
let them go, and we'll transition them first, and then we'll work our way down the list. And
yep,
it's never like, hey, and usually in from what I've seen and heard so far, it's like this is like a year, sometimes a year journey, if not more, of like
yep,
getting everybody to the self-service model. But ultimately I feel like once they're there, the customers are just so much happier. The Kafka maturity just skyrockets, like
yep.
everything gets more innovative in real time. Like, I don't know, just, is that what you see too? It takes about a year and like it unlocks a bunch of different stuff.
It depends on how much of a mess there is.
Okay.
Um, some of them are faster, some of them are slower, and that's okay. Like, I mean, some of these companies take 2 months to approve a firewall request. Like,
True.
there's you just it's gonna take some time, and that's fine. That's okay. Um, and kind of like a surprise, I guess, that we talk a lot to platform teams, and they see the value of okay, you have this permissions model that's interesting. You have resource policies that's interesting, and they start applying these policies and applying things like basic tagging and stuff like that. And a lot of them are surprised because there'll be hundreds of developers who are now logging into the Conductor UI,
Hmm.
and it's just very prominent in the UI. It's the topic catalog, and you just browse the catalog, and it's just amazing. Like you sort by label, whatever
Hmm.
is interesting. The visibility, just by having this in place, the visibility just like so much better, clear as day. Where
Yeah.
like before, it's like yeah, all the data is there in Kafka, but if nobody knows about it, then it's not really there.
Yep.
And you might have some documentation somewhere and like a
Yeah. Some Jira
wiki.
page that hasn't been touched in forever. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like nobody's going to discover that. So the discoverability is like one of these big surprise benefits.
Yeah.
that, once you get the system in place, like, people start to collaborate more. This goes back to the people, like the people problems and the organization. Like, if if you make it easy for someone to log in and view topics and inspect the schemas and like read the documentation, all the document, it's right there in the UI that you're using
Hmm.
every day as you interact with Kafka. Um, ideas pop up. I didn't
Hmm.
know that. I didn't know that we had a business unit that's doing all of this.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what's really nice too is these business units can then talk to each other
Yes.
without talking to the Kafka
No
team.
more expensive meetings anymore.
Yeah.
Like, oh my God.
You say this topic looks good. You could even there right in the UI, you'd be like, I want to subscribe to this. Like, give my application access to that topic. And that's one nice thing about self-service too, is it's not individuals.
Right.
Everything is application based. It's all that's a logical construction. So you say my application would benefit from that. Let me go ahead and request read access to that, not for myself, but for my
Right.
application.
Right.
And then once that permission is granted by the other team directly, you know, no need to bother the Kafka team. The other team directly can say, yeah, sure, go ahead and read that topic. Um, Now you can get started with no meetings.
Yeah.
You just
Yeah.
and in the what's nice is the service account for your application automatically
Hmm.
gets those ACLs. So
Hmm.
you could start iterating on your application and incorporating that data. And then in the UI, everybody on your team, because it's all connected with SSO, they're all connected to the application as well. So in the UI, all of a sudden topics start popping up
Yep.
in their menu. It's like, oh, I got more topics to look at. That's
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, and you know what's funny too that I find is initially there's some actual apprehension too from the platform teams is like, but what do I do if I'm not answering tickets all day and I'm creating topics for people? Like you can kind of like just smell a little bit of the fear. And I think first of all, that's okay. We're talking about a brave new world. But like afterwards, like I've noticed the platform teams are like, well, let's start talking about better failover. Let's talk about new
Yeah,
cost savings use cases. Let's start talking about doing encryption and more importantly, like field level encryption. Let's
yep,
start talking about doing data sharing with external parties.
yep,
And let's talk about like ways we can drive revenue and do like a data for dollars deal kind of thing. Like it changes the way people think. It's just one of these like watershed moments in an
mm.
organization's maturity. I don't know, it just gives me chills thinking about it because, like, I mean, like, okay, like, you and I, we're adults, we have families, like, we work with some major healthcare companies, right? Could you imagine how much faster a prior authorization could go under a self-service model where the application instance, it's all the different stakeholders get to toss their hat in the ring into like an approval or request or in a stream processing application? Like, oh my God, that would be amazing. So, anyways,
Yeah,
it's just stuff like that that, like, it sounds I don't want to necessarily sound trite because, like, we are a company, we have a great service, but, like, there is, like, a public benefit that comes from something like that as well,
yeah.
in terms of the customer getting time back as well and the being a beneficiary of that innovation. Um, yeah.
Yeah, and we had a former product manager, Julian. He always talked about we want the Kafka team to be sipping mai tais on the beach or whatever, But in my experience, it's been like I haven't really seen any fear from these admins. Like, oh, like I'm gonna have less work to do. A lot of these admins are not a lot of these are platform engineers who
Mhm.
own many systems, not
Mhm.
just Kafka, and,
Yep.
and they have a lot on their plate. They literally they just don't have time, like for like it, the when we take this burden off of them, it's not like I'm scared I won't have anything to do anymore. It's like finally I can actually do
Yeah.
things that I want to do or that are important. I feel like I have a better use of my time or just like better work life balance. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, because they're just a lot of these people are the person, like they're just the
Yes.
infrastructure person,
Yep.
um, and they're just they're highly respected in the organization, and they're just totally maxed out on they're
Yes.
just oversubscribed. So if we can help those people get this framework in place, get it humming, get the system humming, so that they don't have to babysit it so much. Then they actually can free up a lot of yeah, like you mentioned, like new new initiatives, like just it totally opens up.
Yeah, everybody's a lot happier. I don't know why, but we've been talking about families a little bit today, mostly me, but like I don't know if you ever experienced this where you come home from work, in my case, I just walk right downstairs and
Mhm.
like some days it's great, the kids are on their own, they're self-servicing, they're doing their own thing. And then other days you come home and like they're hanging off of mom and they're crying and something's on fire in the kitchen or whatever. And like that's the difference.
Mhm.
These poor platform admins, man. I really feel for them. I really want them to have a better day at work,
Yeah.
because they can have more of their attention back. Um,
Yeah, I
I,
mean, your kids are 2 and 4, right?
yeah, yeah,
Mine are 4 and 6.
yeah,
So I've, like, seen a
yeah,
little bit more and, like, yeah, there's a lot more days now where I come down and they're playing Lego and
yep,
you know, they're dressing up in costumes and chasing each other around, that they're just, like, interacting with each other, and
yeah.
it's just I could just, like, you know, take a
You
sip
feel
of
the
what
temperature
yeah.
difference.
I could just take a sip of, whatever Julian was talking about. Like, I could just
Yeah,
enjoy it for a minute that, like, "Oh, okay, they don't need me."
yeah. Yeah, yeah, and, I guess it's just what happens when you mature and grow,
Yeah,
and that's really what we ultimately want to help these organizations do.
that is kind
And I
of a
guess
funny
that's
analogy. I didn't know
yeah,
we'd be talking about that, but yeah.
yeah. Well, and I guess that's the thing, right? In conclusion, is like it's not a destination per se. It's not like cool, we're there, we did it, because there's always things to iterate on and get better
Mhm.
about when it comes to self-service. It's really a journey with milestones,
Yeah.
and you'll only kind of notice the major milestones in more of a retrospective way. Um, but yeah, I guess in terms of the journey and kind of next steps, um, how should they get in touch with us? What kind of other resources should they read about? If you worked at like a Fortune 500 org as like a respected platform dude, like what would you go listen to? What would you go read? What would be your next steps to kind of explore this topic more?
Yeah. So, I mean, I talked to a lot of the nerdy people, who
Mhm.
are they want yeah.
Represent. Yeah.
They like they want a hands-on. They want
Yep.
hands-on keyboard. They don't. It's all very hypothetical or philosophical.
Yep.
Um, so I would suggest just going to the like self-service quick start. We've got on the conductor docs. I don't know. I don't know how to get maybe below me. There will be a. I don't know.
Yeah, and the links. Yeah.
Um, I'll put it in chat for some reason. I don't think that'll help. But
Yeah.
yeah, the self-service quick start, there's a video that goes along with it that's pretty in depth and
I still love your
uh,
DJ Khaled meme in that presentation, by the way. Of all the places where you could sneak one in, it's just amazing. Yeah, and that's where my mind goes to is like just start with community. Like if you don't have a UI
yeah,
or you already use another UI, like try the Conductor community UI. You'll get a free crack at trying self-service for one application.
yep,
And that's a pretty great place to start. And if you like it and you find you get some time back, let us know and we'll help you set up doing more. Like, I think that's a great place to start. Chuck, I can't
yeah.
begin to thank you enough for your time. It's such a
This was
pleasure
fun.
to actually talk about this with you. You have such a wealth of experience. And it's so nice to see like what success looks like from your perspective. You have such a wealth of knowledge. So thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. This
All
was
right.
fun.
Yes.
Cool. Do we end the event?
I think so. I'm gonna hit the end
Okay.
the event button.
I'm gonna hit the big red button